Thanks. Good morning and welcome to this Business and Financial Assistance Forum. I'm Robin Scheid, the Executive Director of Addison County Economic Development, and my staff is with me today, Jennifer Molyneux, who you've met, who's going to be helping to video and record this, which will be available later through our website and on Middlebury Community Television, so we thank them. And then Diane Stockton-Breeze is in the back and has checked you in and you signed up with her. So we're really glad you're here today. We have a broad array of both financial people who work in finance, ways to get funding, as well as people who provide services that can help you grow your business in other ways besides just borrowing money. So hopefully you'll find that helpful. Before we begin, a couple of things. Restrooms, if you go out and around, they're kind of like right over there. But there's restrooms there. And in this room right next to us, we have coffee and little muffins. And help yourself. You feel free to get up anytime to help yourself. So, and that includes everybody here at the table. So what I thought I'd do is I'd like to have everybody at the table who are presenting to you say their names and who they are, but then I'd like all of you in the audience to also, if you could just tell us who you are and what your business is, and if you have any particular needs or interests today, that would be really helpful for us to know too before we all get started. And then we'll sort of, go around and I put together an order just now of folks here at the table talking a little bit about what they do. There'll be plenty of time for questions. There'll be time afterwards for one-on-ones, because if you have something that turns out to be longer than a quick question and answer, everybody's going to stay around with that. I've asked them all to bring their calendars too, so if it makes sense to set up a meeting with you at another time, that can happen as well. So, so that's that. So why don't we have all the presenters introduce themselves, and if you brought other people with you from your organization, let's all have you introduce yourselves too. Thanks. We'll start with Chris.
All right, I'm Chris LaPierre, and I'm a lender at the National Bank of Middlebury.
I'm Megan McLaughlin, and I'm a lender at the National Bank of Middlebury.
I'm Sandy Croft, and I'm a commercial lender at Vita.
I'm Chris Anderson, and I'm an agricultural lender at Vermont Agricultural Credit Corporation.
I'm John Young. I direct a workforce development grant program with the state of Vermont under the Department of Economic Development.
I'm Don Paul. I'm with the Vermont Manufacturing Extension Center, and I'm joined this morning by my colleague John Bates.
Great. I'm Susan Mazza. I'm with the Small Business Administration.
And Robin.
I'm Becca Schrader. I'm with the Vermont Community Loan Fund.
My name is Joanne Spalding, and I also work with John in the Economic Development Department for the state of Vermont for a program called the Vermont Procurement Technical Assistance Center, or PTAC.
I'm Maggie Fox. I'm with Community Capital of Vermont, and we are a community development financial institution.
Brian DeClue. I work for the Vermont Small Business Development Center.
Great. So if you all could tell us who you are, and if you have any particular things you're interested in, we want to be sure we cover it. We'll start with you in the front row.
Yes. Do you want me to?
No, you can just do it right now.
Okay. I'm trying to follow the rules.
For this is fine.
My name is Sarah Spencer, and I own Vermont Chalky Paint. It's a non-toxic paint that's manufactured, made in Vermont. Hi, Joanne.
Hi, Sarah.
I know a lot of you. So I'm here to learn. I'm at a certain point in my business, and I want to know what's the next logical step for me to take in growing my business. Thank you.
Thanks.
Oh, and I'm sorry, this is my business associate, Ms. Sarah Hebert, and she was in the entrepreneur program here in Middlebury, and she's coming here to learn a little bit more about entrepreneurship. She's also selling advertising for her play because she wants to raise money for that, so she'll be leaving in a little bit, so I hope that you'll forgive her leaving early. Thank you.
Great. Welcome, Sarah.
Hi, Marie Pavini. Joanne and Brian, I think I've had some dealings with you a few years ago. I have a sort of a low-tech medical innovation that I've been working on for a few years. And I had an SBDC advisor, Scott Holson, who, when he hooked me up with my first sub-award grant, they hired him away. And so I have no more guidance. And things are still moving along, and I'm doing okay, but I still need somebody to help me.
Great. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Michele Kingston. I own Otterside Animal Hospital. I'm
Hello,
Maggie
Michele.
Fox. Hi. And I also own Lazy Acres Equines. So I'm here thinking about growing that business as well. I know her. We've both been very busy, and I'm like, wow, congratulations! I'm so proud. I'm trying to figure out who I am. I'm Charlotte Helton. I have an inn, the Inn at Logan's Run in Pittsburgh, and I have a boarding facility as well. And I need some help growing my business. We kind of have a growth spurt kind of roadblock, and I just need some help dealing with that. So thank you.
Good morning. My name's Lynn Cole. I'm, for the next 2 days, the director and superintendent of the Hannaford Career Center here in Middlebury. After that, I find myself between opportunities, as Jim Comey so elegantly. So my colleague Charlie Mitchell and I are hoping to start a venture called Addison County Commons, and what it would be is a entrepreneurial venture center where young entrepreneurs could come and have an incubator space to start businesses around the food systems. And we're here because we can use all the help we can get.
That's for sure. I'm Charlie. I'm a rising senior down at the college, and I'm also here on behalf of Acorn.
Yeah, we should have said that.
Which you could explain what ACORN is for people who don't know.
Acorn is Addison County Relocalization Network. It's a small board of people that are trying to watch over our local food system on a county level in some way. So the commons, the food commons, is what we have going for that at this moment.
Great. So it sounds like you're going to be one of those college graduates who sticks around.
Well, that's a question I get a lot.
Yeah.
I don't think I want to answer it on TV.
Like the 8-ball, all signs point to yes, but you know, right? Okay. Hi.
My name is Leah Keller. I'm looking at purchasing a very small coffee roasting business, and I'm really just trying to figure out whether financially it makes sense.
Great. Great. Well, thank you all for sharing a little bit about yourselves, and I think you'll find that there's a lot of options here and lots of people that can help you in different ways. And even if you don't need some of the services that we're talking about today, you may down the road as you grow and get bigger. So great. Thank you. So Brian, I've asked you to go first, and given what we just heard from a lot of people, that seems appropriate.
I'm real busy.
I hope you have a few cards.
Okay, so the Vermont Small Business Development Center, we're a nonprofit. I provide what's called technical assistance to business owners and startups. It's a free service, so let's just get that right off the bat. So you can call me, you can talk to me, and you can talk about your business, and I can give you technical assistance and advice at no cost. It's a wonderful program. Just talking about startups last year, 66 new businesses last year. Over 400 new jobs were created, and that's just the startup phase. That's not the majority of the work that we do. The majority of the work that we do is with people that already are in business and just need help. I need help with marketing. I need help figuring out my financials. Things of that sort. A typical day for me is reviewing business plans, talking to clients, and creating financial statements and budgets for folks that just need help understanding that stuff. So that's a typical day for me. And we all work very well together. Vermont's a very small state, so if there's something that I don't know or that I can't help you with, I'm sure I can find someone that will. So you're in the right spot. I heard a lot of folks that are business owners that just need a little bit of guidance, maybe a second set of eyes to take a look at things. I brought some cards. Give me a call, get on my calendar, and I can help you.
Great.
Good.
Thank you. So next up, I have Sandy. And did we introduce Mike?
We didn't.
Okay.
I missed that.
So reintroduce
My
yourself
bad.
and introduce
So
Mike.
we've got Mike Corbett here from Vita as well, one of our newest commercial lenders.
And Sandy Croft from Vita. So why don't you talk a little bit about your various programs?
Sure. So I'm going to talk about the commercial side of Vita, being that that's my expertise, and have Chris talk about the agricultural side, which is more his expertise. So on the commercial side, we have a number of different loan programs, I mean, really a whole slew of them, that help cover most any financial need that a business might have, from buying real estate and capital expenses like equipment to some working capital, and various different other things in between. We've got some brownfield cleanup programs and a whole slew of things. The ones that I find are the ones that get used the most are our small business loan program, our direct loan program, and our SBA 504 program. And all of those have some commonality amongst them, where the business can put in as little as 10 to 15% equity. We partner with one of the local banks, where they would typically do around 50% of the financing, and then we come in a subordinate position picking up the 35 or 40% that's remaining. And that allows a project to move forward. If the company has limited equity to put in and needs to save some aside for other things like working capital and closing costs. And we also have typically pretty low interest rates relative to what the market is at any given time, which is another benefit to our loan programs.
Do you want to talk about the entrepreneurial loan program, too?
Sure. Oh, yeah, sure. I skipped right over that one. It's a loan program for early stage and technical based companies, where we can, in this case, they're often loans or companies that are early stage enough that a bank is not necessarily ready to step into the game yet, and we can help put together a loan in that case with up to an 80 or 90% of the project cost. Again, considering the situation, it's a relatively low interest rate, but higher than some of our other programs. And many times it has an SBA guarantee on it as well.
What does that mean?
It means that the SBA is agreeing to pay back. Let me kind of step back on that. It's for the worst case, okay? So should the loan go awry and we go through the liquidation process and there is a shortfall, the SBA has made their guarantee that they will come in and make the lender whole on a portion depending on the amount of the guarantee. So that can be the difference between, in this case, Vita, and banks use them as well, the difference between a yes answer or a no answer in many cases. So it's a great service that the SBA provides and that we can partake in some of our loan programs, particularly the entrepreneurial loan program.
And that's what this program is called, the entrepreneurial program?
That's right.
I don't want to breach confidentiality, but are there examples of businesses that you've lent to, that, because usually you have a press release, Vita has a press release about who they've lent to, so I don't know if you're allowed to share any names of businesses or types of businesses, what they've made, or...
Well, I guess I could say in that case, in this one, it tends to be pretty early stage, either startups or something that's more of a technical-based type company in that entrepreneurial program. If you're an ongoing company with a proven track record, and solid assets, firm assets, then probably one of our other loan programs in conjunction with a bank is going to be more cost effective and a better fit for you.
And that's part of what you'd figure out.
Absolutely. You call, you ask, you tell me what your project is, and I can advise you on what programs or program, if there's only one, you may fit into. Absolutely.
So because you brought up SBA, I'm going to switch and ask Susan from the Small Business Administration to explain a little the program, because a lot of people are going to mention SBA, so we might as well get that out.
I'm kind of the gorilla in the room that never says anything. Never described it quite like that before. Yes, I'm SBA, Small Business Administration. We have a lot of different types of programs, most of which are somewhat accessed or used by those here at this table, or we partner with. We have 3 different programs that really help with the financing. One is, we refer to it as a 7A, and that's traditionally accessed via banks like National Bank of Middlebury, the traditional banks, and that is a guarantee program. It can go up to $5 million, so we're talking some significant dollars. And as Sandy was describing, in terms of, which you did a great job, in terms of reducing the risk of the bank, it still means that the business still has to be viable, come to the plate, be the borrower direct and collateralize and guarantee and everything. But what we're really doing is trying to share in the potential loss that the bank might have, which encourages them to make the loan. So in other words, you wouldn't be getting the loan unless we were helping that bank get comfortable with that. The other type of program we have, which is pretty large, is the 504 program, which Sandy mentioned. That is, again, up to $5 million. It's subordinate debt. We work through certified development corporations, one of which is VITA. And that's long-term, low-interest rate, fixed-rate financing for fixed assets, real estate, things like that. But we also have other types of programs, one of which both Vermont Community Loan Fund and VITA have, which is like a pseudo 7A. It's up to $250, but it's more like a traditional financing vehicle. Again, one of those things that maybe a traditional bank wouldn't be comfortable doing, but the other lender who is trying to make the whole deal work says, you know, gee, I can come in with this piece and I can do up to that, and it reduces their risk again. The last of the programs that's really quite valuable to startups and small businesses and small dollar loans is our microloan program. Both for Vermont Community Loan Fund and Community Capital here in the room take advantage of that. And that is where these microlenders will borrow money from us and they turn around and relend. These are dollars up to $50,000. They're typically the highest risk level type loan. The real advantage to the microloan program is there is a technical assistance component that goes with it. So they can provide some counseling on an ongoing basis, both pre and post loan. And it can be really the difference between a small business being able to make it and not being able to make it. It's like having almost like a counselor in the room that they can call and say, oh my God, this is happening, what should I be doing? Not that the microlender is the be-all and end-all, but they're at least a great place to go to get a little bit of guidance and to maybe find other resources that can help you. The other types of things that come into play here in the room, to try and be quick about it, is we work with the Vermont PTAC in terms of government contracting. We work with the Small Business Development Center, which is one of our partners. We also partner with the Women's Business Center, which is located up in Burlington, but she tries to make it statewide, and SCORE counselors, who were experienced individuals who were contributing their time because they want to. But we also partner with other organizations such as VMAC in terms of Vermont Manufacturing Extension Center, to try and get rid of the acronym, to try and help exporters, because we also have some programs that are meant specifically to help people who want to export or who do exporting. And again, we can reduce the risk, but we also partner with many people in the state to try and provide business planning in a serious way for people who want to export. But I'm happy. What we very often get involved in is more triage type stuff, because I often work directly through these lenders, but we often get calls directly from businesses who say, gee, I don't know where to get started. I don't know where to go first. What do I need? And we can help figure out where they're at, what they need, maybe a place they could start. But we also get pulled into the mix when we're all trying to come up with a project or a plan or a solution to meet the needs of a particular business owner or a startup. But very often they're business owners who are trying to get a project done, or maybe experiencing financing difficulties and things of the like. So I work with just about everybody here in the room. And we encourage any kind of phone calls. I have business cards over there. This resource guide you'll find over there, I know that an awful lot of folks at the tables here like this. It's a yearly publication. It's very valuable. It's like an answer book for businesses, places you can go, phone numbers, contacts, state agencies, federal. It really is a good go-to, and I encourage anybody to pick one up. They're all over there on the table.
I would just like to add, thank you, Susan, that the SBA does annual statewide, across the country, statewide business awards for various things. And this year, Addison County was the big winner. I don't think it can ever happen that the top winners have both come from the same county. So Mike Rainville of Maple Landmark Woodcraft was the Vermont Small Business Person of the Year. He got to go down to Washington. I think he was one of the finalists for the National Small Business Person of the Year. And then Sarah Keck, who owns Bees Wrap, was the Vermont Women's Owned Business of the Year. And she's in Bristol, so Middlebury and Bristol. So
and our celebration was
the
right
celebration
over here
was
at the Middlebury Inn.
So
it was great.
We're very proud of them.
Yeah, it's a great program. I won the Woman in Business Champion for another entity I have, Got Clicks, and it was extremely valuable. I was able to speak nationally for marketing, and I can't say enough about it. It's a great program. Congratulations.
So it's very exciting for them.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Susan. All right, now we'll hop back to Chris from Vermont Ag Credit Corp.
Excuse me, yes. Vermont Agricultural Credit Corporation is actually a subsidiary of VEDA, or Vermont Economic Development Authority. And we were formed basically to promote agriculture in Vermont. While we do agriculture and forestry in Vermont, while we do work with the traditional farms, the dairy farms, the vegetable growers, orchardists, and things like that, we also are involved in a lot of agricultural enterprises that are value-added, that provide value-added products. Some examples of those are vineyards that are producing their own wine. Hard cider is another big product that's coming about now. We're involved in that. I have a small agricultural enterprise that produces jellies and jams and relishes from produce that they grow on their own property. We deal with all different sizes of businesses. The jam business that I mentioned, both people have full-time jobs and they grow the products on the weekends and evenings, and then I don't know when they do it, but they make the jams and jellies and everything, and then they sell them locally. So, and we work with startups, people that are just wanting to start their businesses, and what we do is we provide financing for those, and we work with SBA, with Community Advantage Loan Program, which is a guarantee program that VEDA works with as well. But we also work with Farm Service Agency, which provides similar type service to that SBA does, but for agriculture. We also partner with a lot of the local banks, and we also work with USDA RD, which is a little different. They provide financing for primarily where we're working with them is on working capital and that type of stuff, or farm labor housing and that type of thing. So that's pretty much it.
I think you have some requirements when you do the value-added one about the percentage of products that come from Vermont versus out of state. So like if you're making salsa, that's not the same as a jam where you grow your own blueberries, or
right.
You have some requirements that
to
way.
Be eligible for a back loan, you have to be, number one, you have to be a Vermont resident or going to become a Vermont resident. Your business has to be located in Vermont. And if it's a corporation, incorporated in Vermont, and you need to be using primarily produce that is grown in Vermont. We have a few companies that source some of like spices and different things like that can't be grown in Vermont, or if they're producing wine and they can't grow enough grapes on their property to start with anyways, they may source some grapes juice off of it. But it primarily has to be sourced from Vermont.
If our paint has whey in it, which is a byproduct of cheese, it's the waste product, would that qualify for a loan? I'm just trying to think outside the box.
So where does the whey
It's
come from?
manufactured in Hardwick, and the mines are here in Middlebury for the calcium carbonate, and then we have our offices in St. George, Vermont. We're all over, basically all over Vermont.
I don't know if calcium carbonate, I don't know, is an agricultural product, but the whey certainly is. Yeah.
But, yeah, so.
But it definitely would on the Vita side, on the commercial side, if it didn't on the ag.
That's the good thing. If it's kind of, there are businesses that we work with that could fit on the Vita side just as well.
This is so valuable because I'm amazed that this room should be packed because this is such a huge resource to have. So I'm not having to drive to all of you to talk to you. I can at least be able to say. I'm just trying to get creative with how best to look at financing for my business and how to position it to the next level. So that's great, though, that you offer that. It's incredible. What about repurposing farms? Do you get involved with the farm-to-table initiatives and things of that nature?
Yep. The one thing with a farm that we won't do is if somebody just wants to buy it as a real estate investment. It has to be a working farm. One of the other requirements is that it doesn't have to be your sole source of income. Like, again, the jam maker, the majority of their income comes from their employment, but they are actually doing it as a business. It's not a hobby or something like that. They just happen to produce some jam and sell jam at a local market or something like that.
What if the barn is repurposed for like a multi-purpose? What if it was used for farming but also used as like a retail agritourism?
We do get involved in agritourism as well. Yep.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Chris. Mike, did you want to add something?
The only thing I wanted to say, Chris, is maybe the other difference between BAC and Vita is that BAC does direct, you don't have to partner with the bank, whereas typically Vita, we typically partner with the bank and do subordinate financing. BAC actually, because there's a lot of banks that don't do agricultural lending anymore, BAC does the direct, first mortgage, can be the sole source of financing for a transaction.
That's a good point. Thank you. So at some point your business is going to grow and you're going to hire people or you're going to get a new piece of equipment and you might need some training. So John can talk about workforce development.
It's the somewhere down the road. So the program I direct with economic development is called the Vermont Training Program, and I get asked all the time if I'm going to come in and actually train people, or do I have people to train? And it's not. It's a workforce development grant program. So we get allocated roughly $1.3 million a year that I will go out and meet with employers, typically not startups. They're sort of developing down the road. And a good example in this area is Olivia's Croutons, if anybody's heard of Olivia's. So they're putting together a new facility and hiring a number of people. And so that's where we engaged with Olivia's at that point. So I had met with them probably 6 weeks or 8 weeks ago or so, and as they're making their expansion. So the Vermont Training Program is really open to all sectors. We are used primarily in the manufacturing and production world. Probably the majority of our grant money goes to employers like that. We do serve some small employers. Small in my world might be 8 to 12 employees potentially. But we also are used by some of our larger employers that might have 300 to 600 employees or so. We can help defer some of the cost of training. A training provider, VMEC, who you're going to hear about in a little bit, it's not unusual in the manufacturing sector that they might be one of the vendors that some of the production or manufacturing facilities will seek for with either lean processes or new tool sets or needs that they have that the employer will have. Not unusual, we're seeing now a lot of leadership type trainings where a lot of Vermont companies that they've promoted from within, which is something we love because a lot of times the people you're promoting, they live somewhat local, they've been great employees, but yet they're wonderful at their process or whatever you have them doing, but they really haven't done any leadership in the past. So not unusual that we're helping right now with some leadership type training. The other thing is, if you haven't noticed, our world is getting a lot more complicated and a lot more complex. And so we have wonderful university graduates, we have wonderful high school graduates, but some of our processes, some of our things that we need are become so complicated that very rarely is somebody going to step out of college or high school and jump right into being a content expert in your area. So again, not unusual. Cybersecurity world, where we have some colleges that are putting out cybersecurity graduates, but there's different platforms even in cybersecurity. So it's a good baseline, but we really don't have tenured cybersecurity people in Vermont. So I'm happy to meet with anybody potentially in the future. We can help out with up to 50% of what a vendor training would cost you, and up to 50% for an employee's hourly rate during a training. So if it is an on-site type training where you have a content expert. So if you are looking to expand, sometimes I meet with companies that have currently 2 people but are going to blossom up to 22 people within the next 3 or 4 months, and we can't really, it's not really an onboarding of new employee program, it's really for that training that just doesn't typically exist out there.
And you have repeat customers, but
Correct.
there's a time frame for that.
So,
right?
so there is. So in the past, we've sort of had a lot of repeat customers out there, and what we're really looking for is what's new and what's moving with a company. So, if it's just onboarding people, 3 people every year for the next 3 years, probably not the best place that we would put Vermont Training Program money. But if you are bringing in new tool sets or there's a new process or a new line of business, I want to talk to people on a yearly basis to see what's going on. And so there's always a possibility, but if it's sort of the same training for the same people and the same needs, there's a really good chance that we just can't fund multiple year grants like that.
Could I ask a couple questions?
Please,
So
Lynn.
this is different than Department of Labor wet fund grants?
Sort of.
Okay.
So it's both general fund monies. So I'd say
out of Vermont.
Vermont. They're both state general fund dollars.
Okay.
The 2 programs are run differently, and I can offset the hourly rates for employers, where the WET fund, WET fund stands for Workforce Education and Training Fund, and that's if you would Google that through the Vermont Department of Labor, you would see that. So they can pay for potentially travel to a training, where I can't pay for the travel to the training, but I can pay for the actual cost of the training itself. So it's really sort of similar, but it's different sort of training. I think if I could put a plug for the Vermont Training Program, is we have a rolling grant application. So if it's you apply and you get approved on August 1st, it can roll through the August 1st of 2018. For the WET funds currently, they have just 1 or 2 release dates throughout the year. I think they are re-looking at that process a little bit. So it's you got to figure out when to apply to that. Where the Vermont Training Program, I have, I think, 6 or 7 applications in process as we speak. that will get through the approval process probably within the next week or two.
Once they're approved, you have a year to spend those funds?
Yep, up to a year. Now, sometimes if it's a smaller grant for a particular training, it's done in 3 months, and that's okay as well. Yep. If it's extensive, though, because again, I mentioned earlier, what I'm looking for is the employer to pull out their crystal ball, and I understand a lot of times it's a snow globe in Vermont, to try to predict what my training needs to look like within that year period. So we are flexible, and Don here, we talked about an employer that we do have a grant with, that we ended up making an amendment. They didn't need one end of the money, but they needed this vendor-style training instead, and so we ended up amending the grant to do that. So we are truthfully very flexible and agile. It's really employer-driven training, and as long as we understand it and can see the vision where the employer is going, we can decide on the investment.
How much are a single grant?
The smallest I think I've gotten in FY17, which ends this Friday, I think is $3,200, and the largest grant in FY17 is $208,000. So it varies.
It's a range.
Yeah, it's a large range. And you know, truthfully, that $3,000 might have been just as important as the $208 to the larger companies. So
that's right.
And I have two questions
Sure.
for that. With the grant, is it a matching grant so that, you know, if you present 25,000, let's say, then the potential employer has to come up with 25,000 to match?
So, yes, but it's not necessarily we're looking for the match, it's what we can help out with. So we can help out with up to 50%. So if it is that on-site training where you have the content expert in your house, in your shop, we're potentially going to be able to help out with 50% of the hourly rate of that employee. So I have literature up here. We also have, there's qualifications as far as benefits being offered by employers. It's all set by legislative statute on what we need to follow with that. So we are asking for the match, but we're only saying we're going to only help with a certain percentage of the training.
Totally makes sense. Second question, do you help with, you mentioned talking to people that have 2 employees and then they want to expand. Do you work with organizational structure of companies to say, well, this worked for this company, you might want to look at this, or is that out of your wheelhouse?
It depends where my entry point is with the employer, and certainly we'll refer out those services. Sometimes it'll be with Small Business Development Center folks. Sometimes it'll be with other vendors that are out there, perhaps. So certainly happy to share examples of what's happened in the grants. We also put out an annual report. So if you were to Google the Vermont Training Program, you will come to our portal on the Agency of Commerce and Community Development website. And every year we put out an annual report because it is your money, it's taxpayer money that we're spending. You can click on the PDF of the annual report, and it's not a great read, it's 25 pages or so, but it will have a map of the state and where we'd spent dollars and the employers that received that funding, and there'll be a little snippet on each employer on what that particular funding was used for.
Thank you.
Down in this area, Robin is also, she will be put on the grant application as well, as a local person to sort of comment on the employer and looking at the grant as well.
So that's where I make my sales pitch on why they should give the grant. Because there is a review,
Correct.
team.
Yep, there's a review process. Yeah.
Yeah. So, great. Thanks, John. Let's see. Next would be Maggie, Community Capital.
Well, I guess I didn't guess the order of presenters. So I'm Maggie Fox. I'm with Community Capital of Vermont. I'm a business advisor. I actually started as a loan officer, so I've sort of been on both sides of the lending and business advising continuum. And Community Capital of Vermont is a community development financial institution. We're also an SBA intermediary. So as Susan had mentioned, we're the type of organization that would borrow money from the SBA and then lend it out in smaller amounts to startup and small businesses. So businesses that are, people that are looking to start a business or to grow an existing small business. And our loans are fully amortized, and we lend from $1,000 to $100,000. So we're really looking at low to moderate income entrepreneurs who might not have the collateral or the credit history to afford them access to traditional bank lending. And Community Capital's mission is really to help small businesses become bankable. So in other words, you have your business idea, you start your business, or you grow your small business, and working with, accessing capital by working with our loan officers and then with our business advisory services group to really get a good foundation going. What we're looking to do is help you then be able to access more traditional forms of financing. Because we're taking on a higher level of risk, typically, we don't look for 100, or we will finance 100% of a loan. So we're not looking for a borrower to necessarily contribute a percentage of the total capital cost or capital need. And also, we're not looking for 100% collateral. So we're taking on a higher level of risk, and therefore our rates are a little bit higher. So our rates are 7.5 to 9, no, I guess 7 to 9.5%. But we do offer a 2% discount for businesses that produce Vermont value-added agricultural products. So that's more of the lending side of things, and of course I'll be available for questions, and there's marketing collateral over on the table that you're welcome to grab. And then a couple of years ago, Community Capital of Vermont took a look at the technical assistance that we were providing and rebranded the technical assistance and really rethought our approach to how we deliver support after someone takes out a loan with Community Capital. And again, referring to Susan's comment about the loans that organizations will take out from the SBA, we also have an accompanying technical assistance grant. And what that allows us to do is to, after you have a loan from Community Capital, we have a staff that can be available as business coaches, business consultants. We can help you with virtually anything that arises in your business. We either have the expertise in-house or we have external resources that we will contract and utilize. And much of it is covered by grant funds that we apply for on an annual basis from the SBA. So with your loan from Community Capital, then you get a business advisor. You don't have to use the business advisor services. It's not a requirement, but it's available. So let me think of some examples. So there are situations that we encounter in which a business owner may need a depth of coaching, for example, that and an intensity of coaching that would be beyond what one of our business advisors would typically engage in, because we try to be available to all of our borrowers, and there are many that we're working at any given time. But if there's a situation that a business owner encounters, perhaps it's time for a new business plan and there's a particular challenge in it that would take more time and attention than one of our staff might have available, we'll bring in an external coach. We work with AdvoCoach, and so we'll bring someone in for 12 weeks, for example, to meet with the business owner on a weekly basis, and we will cover that entire cost for the first 12 weeks. And then if the business owner wants to continue with the coaching for the next 12 weeks, they'll kick in some percentage of that cost, and we'll cover the rest, etc. Other examples might be, we have a traveling classroom that we've had up and running for a couple of years, and we take training, primarily technical training, QuickBooks and things like that, around the state, and we will roll in with our case of laptops, and we'll set up a, lab-style training environment. Michelle, I think you're familiar with that. Yeah. And we'll deliver a day-long QuickBooks training. The intention is not to turn you into a bookkeeper, but it's to give you enough information and hands-on experience that you can create customers and create vendors and enter invoices and make payments and really get sort of the basics of your financial bookkeeping data into QuickBooks, and then work with your bookkeeper or accountant. We're also available to help with financial planning. If you run into situations, employee issues, employee relations issues, you get that first workers' compensation claim. What do you do with it? Right? So you can call us, no cost, and if we very often we have the answers, and if we don't, we can get you the resource that will help. And then as far as some examples of the kinds of businesses that we lend to, it can be everything from the single person sole proprietor cleaning company that needs to borrow $1,500 to buy a vacuum, right? To the sap collector who has a 3,000 tap operation and needs working capital to get through sort of the off season, so to speak. All the way up to more notable things, if you're familiar with Mamava. Mamava is a company that produces lactation pods so that women have a private place to nurse or pump in public places such as airports. There's one at Burlington International, and a number of them around the country. The NFL has really bought into these and is starting to put them in football stadiums. Right? It's good for business. That's right. That's exactly right. It brings women to the football game. So anything they can do to up the ticket sales. So that's just a small snapshot of the kind of business owners that we work with, but we're really focusing on the community and economic development piece of it.
Wow, I learned more. The QuickBooks thing, do you do that is it just for your own clients, or would you do, if we organized a workshop around that here, would you come for?
Well, I'm looking at this space going, this would be a lovely space for a training. Yeah. Well, our first focus is on our borrowers. Right. And then if we have available seats remaining in a class, we'll open it up to the SBDC, we'll open it up to the community, for example. Our focus is really business owners or would-be business owners, with the emphasis first on our borrowers. Right.
Okay, thanks. And I'm sorry, somebody else had a question.
Yeah, I did have a question. With your loan program, you said it's 7.5% to 9.5% interest rate?
I misspoke. It's 7% to 9.5%. Okay. I apologize.
No, I probably misheard. So if someone gets a loan through Community Capital of Vermont, is there any penalty for refinancing it down the road once they start getting established, and then refinance it with another at a lower interest rate? Is there any penalty for that at all?
There's no penalty for that. There's no penalty for paying the loan off early. Yeah, and we encounter that all the time. And our intention is, because we're a mission-driven organization, we don't have shareholders that we need to make happy. And really what we're trying to do is help people become self-sufficient, self-sustaining entrepreneurs.
What's the length of your loan?
Well, up to 10 years. Typically it's around 2 to 5. But we're very flexible in our terms. It could be 10-year with a 7-year balloon. So we really want to work with people to create a, sort of a loan package that works to create a sustainable, successful business.
Thanks very much, Maggie. And so moving up to maybe slightly larger loans would be Becca from Vermont Community Loan Fund.
Yes. So I'm from the Vermont Community Loan Fund, and we also, like Community Capital, kind of fall into that, both business assistance and capital providers. We also work with a lot of these folks, both in providing business advisory services and our financing as well. This is our 30th year. And we started out primarily in affordable housing lending, which we still do a lot of, but I'm not going to talk about because that's not really who's here. We're based in Montpelier, but we work statewide, And we are a nonprofit, mission-driven lender. We're also a community development financial institution, which is a program of the U.S. Treasury. We've gotten several grants from them that we're able to use as capital for relending as well. We also participate with the SBA, as Susan mentioned, in intermediary lending. So we do the microloan program as well, where we can do loans up to $50,000, and there is that business advisory piece along with it. We also do lending through the USDA Rural Development. We do intermediary lending there also, and then we do some guaranteed programs through both USDA and SBA as well. So our other two programs besides affordable housing and community facilities is we have a business loan program, and then we have kind of a specialty business program for childcare lending. For the last 15 years, we've really focused a lot of resources and attention to childcare lending, finding a real need for that in the state. So we have some specific programs around that. I did bring some just ideas of examples of people that we've helped so you can get kind of a general idea of what we do. On one hand, I would say there's really no typical VCLF borrower. We work with lots of different kinds of businesses. We do have that kind of specialty area in childcare. And then in the past, probably about 5 years, we've also developed a lot of resources around food, farm, and forest. We have a food, farm, and forest program that is a reduced interest rate. So we have investors that lend us money, and we do that through, it's kind of like a CD, or we also have a program that's kind of like operates like a money market account. So they invest their money with us, and then we relend it. And so with the food, farm, and forest program, that those monies that we get from investors subsidize part of the interest rate. So where our typical interest rate would also be around 7%, you can get a discounted rate down to 5.25% with the food, farm, and forest program. Another program that we have around agricultural and forestry products, and that also includes some value-added products, is our new Sprout program. Those are small loans, typically up to about $60,000, and to qualify for those, you have to not be able to qualify for some of our other programs because it's really favorable rates. So for the first 2 years, you don't pay anything, and the interest is there's an interest-only piece that is paid for by a grant that we received from the Working Lands Enterprise Board. And then the rest of the loan is fully amortized over 5 years, and you pay 2% interest. And again, the remainder is subsidized by that grant. So there's also a technical assistance piece that comes with that. So we have our in-house technical assistance, which I'll talk more about in a minute. And then we also are able to put some funding towards third-party resources for things that we don't do ourselves or we're not experts in ourselves. Some examples of some of our borrowers in Addison County, and if you go to our website, investinvermont.org, we always have our borrowers sign off on social impact reporting because they're the best part of telling our story. So all these examples are listed on our website. You can read more about them. You may be also familiar with them. One example is Bridport Creamery. I don't know if anybody's familiar with them. They are one of our SBA microloan borrowers. So they got a microloan to purchase some cheese making equipment specifically. And then we were also able to work with them. Our in-house technical assistants helped them with financial statements, so producing profit and loss, producing a balance sheet, understanding what all those numbers mean, why it's beneficial not just for your lender, but also for you to have those financial statements, because one of the questions we get a lot from borrowers is, can I afford to hire someone, or can I afford to build this piece, to buy this piece of equipment? And the answer is, well, if you do your financial statements, you can answer that question yourself. So we provide a lot of assistance around that, helping you with the kind of cash flow projections, all that kind of thing. And then there are the sorts of things that we don't know how to do, like make cheese. So Bridport wanted to add a new product to their line. It was a new recipe that they had not done before, so we were able to use some SBA third-party resources to bring in a consultant to teach them that new cheese recipe. So that's a really good example, I think, of bringing together all different kinds of resources to produce an integrated service and product for a borrower. Another example locally in our child care side is the Bristol Family Center. So the SBA generally, you can only relend to for-profit businesses, but they do make an exception for child care centers. So Bristol Family Center is a nonprofit child care. And what we find with a lot of our child cares, in particular our nonprofit child cares, is they don't have a lot of that business experience. They're great with kids. They know all about child development, but they don't know a lot about payroll and setting up, making sure they have the right insurance and all those kinds of things. So they are also an SBA borrower. They received a working capital loan. So again, it doesn't always have to be for that specific piece of equipment. And we also then provided them assistance, and still do, with their financial management and just their operating a business, and what is the right mix of infants and toddlers and preschoolers and school-age kids to make sure that they're financially viable. And then sort of on the outer edges of just random different kinds of businesses that we work with, we've also worked with Danforth Pewter. Yes, and we've had several loans with them as well. And Nathaniel Group, which produces medical equipment. So really run the gamut of kinds of small businesses. So I would say that we generally, if you're like from community capital to us, our loans are a little bit larger. We do sometimes do loans smaller than $5,000, but not very often. And our maximum loans in the business and child care are $350,000. So we do those through term loans, and we also do lines of credit. And we have some cases where we are the primary lender, for a real estate purchase, for working capital, for equipment purchases, those kinds of things. And then we also have sometimes where we'll come in partnering with a bank or an economic development corporation, or a couple of banks, a whole group of people to help make a project work. So like a lot of the folks here, I think there's no wrong place to call, and we all work together really well to sort of put together partnerships and things that work best for business owners. So out on the table there at the front, I have business cards for myself. I run our business advisory services, and I also am our point of contact for the government programs that we're involved with, like SBA and USDA. And then I also have Dan Winslow's cards over there. He's our business program loan coordinator. So that would be the first place that you would stop if you're looking for financing, is putting in an inquiry with him, and then he kind of takes it from there and lets you know what kind of information he needs and those kinds of things. I also have a brochure for our business loan program, which has some FAQs in it and more information. There's a card over there on our Food, Farm, and Forest Fund, a brochure on our child care program, and then if you want more of an idea of the kind of lending that we do and examples of borrowers, over on the table there I put our social impact report, one of our newsletters, and our annual report from last year. Our 2016 annual report launches this week and is available on our website. So.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to switch from lending to other ways to help you make money and go to Joanne at PTAC, and you can explain what that all means.
Yes. Considering I didn't do that when I actually made my introductions this morning, I just gave you a really long acronym. What that stands for, again, is the Procurement Technical Assistance Center, and what we do is we assist companies in government contracting. So that's anywhere from bidding on municipal, local contracts to federal contracts. We help any aspect of becoming qualified, identifying the opportunities, helping you respond to those particular opportunities when they arise, and then even helping you through the award phase. The good thing about our program is that all of our services are free. We hold workshops and training events, which we don't charge for too. And all of our one-on-one counseling is also free. We're funded in part through a cooperative agreement with DLA, which is the Defense Logistics Agency, and the state of Vermont, which is why I'm located with John in economic development. We are state employees, not federal employees. We have a counselor in Chittenden County, one in Newport, one in Springfield, one in Rutland, and I kind of have the middle part of the state, east to west or west to east, however you want to swing it. Some of the things that we do, I know that it was mentioned a couple of times, we do work very closely with some of the other resources. Some of our counselors are co-located with the SBDC folks. So just to kind of reiterate some of the conversation that's happened today, if you have any assistance or need any guidance, we all work very well together. So even if I'm not the person, or we'll receive referrals from an SBDC or from RDCs as well on companies that have an interest in government contracting. So to talk a little bit more about government contracting, the government literally buys everything. So I have worked with businesses that are large military suppliers for ballistic eyewear or protective gear, ammunition, you name it, people that put parts into aircraft as well, to a gentleman that didn't even have Microsoft Office on his computer, but he cuts trees for a living. So I worked with him for about 3 days. And he was very successful in winning a contract with the Green Mountain National Forest for tree mastication, which was pretty impressive. So anything you can think of, there may potentially be a fit for. And one of the other things that we do, just to kind of go back to Susan mentioning earlier, if you're doing anything with the federal government, they have a certain requirement that federal contracting dollars have to go to small businesses. So of a certain percentage of all total spend for the federal government, some of that goes to a small business. Of that percentage, they break it down even farther to socioeconomic categories. And there are some programs that are administered by the SBA, such as the Women-Owned program and a Hubzone program and an 8A program. So Hubzone stands for Historically Underutilized Business Zone, and that is a program that is specifically based on geography. The 8A program is kind of a social and economically disadvantaged program. It's a program that requires a lot of. Okay, so let's just say we have one business in the entire state of Vermont that has actually gone through the process, and that is involved in that program. It is a 10-year program, so there is essentially a 10-year program. There are a lot of requirements around it and regulations that you have to kind of follow guidelines to participate in. And the other is a women-owned. That is all things that we hold workshops on, and we co-host those workshops with SBA. And we help you through all of those certification processes. So if you happen to be a woman-owned business and you're looking to become involved with any federal contracting, you want to go through the WOSB program through SBA, we sit with you and help you put together all the paperwork and go through the process of the registrations for that. The Hubzone is the Historically Underutilized Business Zone. And relatively recently, there were just some base closures. They're called BRACs here in Vermont, one in Chester, one in Rutland, and that essentially affected surrounding counties. So right now, and probably until about 2020, we'll say, maybe 22, Addison County, Washington County, Wyndham, Windsor, Rutland, Bennington are all qualified as Hubzone counties. So if you have a business and your primary office location and 35% of your employees reside in the Hubzone or a Hubzone, you could essentially qualify for this particular program. Because it's based on geography and census data, it's 2020 because the census data runs every 10 years. So we're assuming that the BRAC will fall off by 2020, and then it's the federal government, so it'll probably take a year or two for that to actually process.
Speed of government.
And yes, the speed of government. Speed? And go through.
That's why.
Exactly. Let's see, what else can I say? So another example I can give besides my tree mastication gentleman, we worked with Simon Pierce, the glass company, and actually assisted in them getting a contract with the embassy for stemware, and it was a $4 million contract. Another example, there's an event very similar to this business forum that happens over in Lamoille County, and I attended one year and connected with a gentleman that owned a local sporting equipment company, and after the meeting we sat down and I helped him through a couple of processes, and he actually ended up getting a contract with the Coast Guard, the Coast Guard for lacrosse equipment, because the military has sporting teams.
How about food?
Food, okay. So food is another one. Let's see, what would be a good example? We're currently participating with an agricultural kind of partners team. USDA, Buildings and General Services participate in it, and we look at companies in Vermont and see how we can assist them in getting more involved with selling their products and services. Obviously, our arm is the government, so we look at things like commissaries, prisons, state agencies, even hospitals, things along those lines. There are a couple of clients that we work with, cheese manufacturers, and even a cannery over in my area in the Barrie area, on selling those particular products. I even have a client that actually makes dog treats, because there are canine units and police dogs and special needs animals that require training and things along those lines. So there really is an opportunity for everything. I guess one of the other things that I could probably mention really quickly is right now our program or department houses and maintains the Vermont Bid Board. So if you are interested in just looking at some opportunities maybe posted locally for the state of Vermont, you can go on to the Vermont Business Registry, put an account in there for your company. It's all self-entry, it's free, and you can actually set up your own profile. So anytime an opportunity is posted on the bid board, maybe Agency of Transportation, Buildings and General Services, they do a majority of the purchasing for the state of Vermont. They use the bid board very frequently. But anytime an opportunity is posted by any one of those agencies on the website, if it matches your keyword, you'll receive a notification of it. You can go through.
With the snake codes, or?
Yes. There are some obviously larger requirements sometimes when dealing with federal government contracting and identifying certain codes that are used by the government. We help you through that process. We help you through the one of the mandatory registrations, which is a system for award management. I should also put in a little bit of a plug. If for any reason you ever do have to get this registration, a DUNS number, a cage code, anything along those lines, anytime you do business with the government, it's free. It should be free. And if you ever find that you're being charged, or somebody is trying to sell you their services, saying that there are requirements to pay this fee to do X, pick up the phone, give me a call. 9 times out of 10, 10 times out of 10, they are just third-party solicitors that are just trying to sell something
But even at Dunn's
for
and
free.
Bradstreet, don't you need to pay for that?
Free.
No.
Free.
Really?
Free.
No.
Free. Yep.
You can sign up for
Good to know.
Exactly. So Dun & Bradstreet is a commercial company. If you own a business, you probably have already been contacted by them because they're trying to sell some of their commercial services to you. But they have a government arm to them as well. So the government side is where you can get your DUNS number for free and you don't have to pay a fee for it. I'm not saying that you don't, or you shouldn't. It's a business decision. If that you feel like you want to utilize the other services offered by Dun & Bradstreet, they are a legit company, obviously. So you could, if that's something you wanted to do. But if you just need to do a registration, or if you're just looking at pursuing government contracts, that number is free. And we can help you get the number, help you through the registrations, all of those things. Yeah.
So just a couple of things, back to the food for one. And I may be making this up, but it seems to me, I mean, like the government needs to eat, so federal as well as state. So there's always something. So it seems to me, and I don't know that it ever actually happened, but I think Francie at Olivia's Croutons also looked into, because they need croutons and salads. So when I'm thinking about incubators and food hubs and things like that, that could be a really interesting long-term,
Absolutely.
process. You just, no matter how small, as you said.
Correct.
Don't think you can't sell to the government, because they need everything.
Yeah.
Secondly,
and we did meet with Olivia's.
Yeah, okay, that's what I am remembering.
Yeah.
In another life, when I was a consultant, I signed up for the Vermont Bid Board, and I ended up getting contracts working with the, what was then the Department of Education, now the Agency of Education, and the Vermont Public Transit Association, doing consulting work for boards and things like that. So the Bid Board actually really does work, and there could be some great contracts that come out of it.
Yes, thank you.
But in all fairness, if you're going to go for a PTAC and government contract, you need to be ready to scale to that level. So
You wouldn't apply for things that you weren't ready
That you're
for.
not ready
And
for.
that's where Joanne can also help you. Right.
But if you,
How do you access that? The bid board?
Very good question. So I actually did bring some material too, and over by the muffins, I have.
Get a muffin, get a brochure.
What a deal.
Government contracting and food. See, you had the agriculture.
Right,
stuff
there we
happening
go.
right there.
good product placement.
So we have brochures on the program. There's a trifold over there. I also have what we call rack cards. There's one over there for the bid board. It gives you some basic instructions, what the website is and things along those lines. And also some programs for the socioeconomic categories that I was talking about, some of those specific registrations that we help with, and my business cards. If you happen to be located in a different area of the state, I also have some of my counterparts' business cards too. So,
Diane?
Speaking of SBA awards, Joanne's director was acknowledged as the partner of the year by the SBA. So.
That's right. And
And gave credit to her whole organization.
Yeah. So, great partners.
yes.
Thank you. Thanks. And congratulations. Chris, National Bank of Middlebury. Chris and Megan.
Sure. I mean, we'll just give you a little spiel in that we're just a traditional bank, albeit a small and local one, which I think is an advantage in that we tend to be fairly nimble, and we don't necessarily have a box that you need to fit into apply for financing. We can be fairly flexible, and I would just say that we do an awful lot of things with the SBDC, ACEDC, VITA, etc. We work very well together, and I would encourage really any of you to please use these resources, particularly with business planning. We're all looking for the same information, and the more you can give us, the easier it is for us to help you out and right along in conjunction with these folks. Anything else you want to add, Megan?
And we work in all various stages of growth and development. We're talking, so there's times that we could work independently, where you could get a loan just from a bank alone. depending on the complexity of the situation, that's where the more partners we involve. Most of them are sitting at this table here. And I was actually thinking of an example. I know we've talked about how we all work together, but almost from a company we were working with wanted to expand their operations. So they first went to the Small Business Development Center to help them kind of come up with their estimates of what their business is going to look like after they're up and running, and what they think they're going to have in revenues, kind of a pro forma later down the road. And then next they partnered with us and with Vita and with the SBA. So in that case, just I'm probably being redundant, but I think it's just helpful to understand, because the structures get complicated a little bit, where the bank is doing sort of the senior loan on it, Vita is doing the loan below it, and then the SBA is kind of guaranteeing that loan in that worst case scenario. So the three of us then partnered. And then sometimes for a company, if they even need a little bit more help beyond that, that's where economic development agencies come into play. We actually were using a sister company of Addison County Economic Development, and they helped with some working capital financing. I know then John's group came in to help with training, and Joanne helped with some procurement on government. So that's just as we were talking, I realized, wow, almost everyone at this table was involved in that success. It's not always as when you need a loan, it's not always that complicated. But the good news is, if it is, we all could sort of partner together and try to bring you from point A to point B.
And as sort of the more traditional financing entity as the National Bank of Middlebury, I think you might be the only one that does revolving lines of credit. Do you guys do? You do revolving lines of credit? You do too. Okay, so some of us only do term loans.
Right.
And you are maybe less likely to do a real startup without any kind of a track record? Less likely? Not never.
I never want to say
Depends
no.
on the transaction.
Right.
I think it's fair to say that if you're starting from scratch, dip your toes in first. Don't jump in completely. It makes it easier to bank. You know, your example, Chris, about the entrepreneurs that maybe they keep their day job for a while and they start their business on their side. It's kind of, you're easier to bank when you start small, I guess, and create that track record.
And do you have a loan size range that you guys do?
I would say, what would our minimums be? 10, 20?
I think technically it's 5, but generally we're looking at slightly, that 10 to 20 is more traditional. One thing that's interesting is, so we are a community bank, but if we get into something that's really big, we actually will partner with other community banks, so that we could have, and we're talking sort of in that $4 million or up area, but we could kind of phone a friend and work on it together, which is a sort of fun way to still have the full community banking experience if you have a need that extends beyond what our lending capacity to one single borrower is. And beyond sort of just the traditional banking needs, we also provide obviously the deposit side services too. So if you need help with merchant processing or payroll or direct deposits to your employees, those are other services that a traditional bank also could help offer.
Great. Thank you. Do you want to make a comment? I haven't gone yet, and then Don's going.
No.
Okay.
My comment actually was, I'm sitting here thinking, should I kind of put my 2 cents in? I kind of view it as we're all of the partners up here do different things, but out of the financing side, there's different risk tolerances based on who the organizations are, what their purpose is. National Bank of Middlebury, I would guess, is probably the most out of this group risk averse, probably a little bit more conservative than the others in the room, but that's where the collaboration comes in. Whereas they may be able to do more of a traditional portion or the traditional lender, whereas some of the other partners in here can do other pieces that may get riskier in terms of their collateral base or whatever. And so it really is a matter of starting somewhere and talking. Brian might be a good place when it comes to the financing piece or the financial planning piece, but then realizing that depending upon what you're looking to do, you may have a different target up here that you would want to be going to visit and meet with, and they can always bring in all of the other parties here to make it all happen, because you can have 3-4 lenders at a time in one particular project, but each one may say, I can do this piece, but not this piece. I need help with a guarantee here, but I can take a first here, and that's how these situations all work out. And they also work out in terms of maybe the downside in workouts. We're pretty good at coming together in terms of trying to figure out ways of restructuring in some cases, things that will be helpful, that will be workable to an entity to keep things going, or to make things more palatable, and how that goes. So.
I think one of the expressions that we use in our office, and I think everybody here would agree with it, is that there's no wrong door. So if you call any one of us, we can help you find the place where you need to be. And what we all care about is helping you succeed. So it's not about whether, I get the credit or Joanne does or Maggie or Becca, anybody else. It's, we want you to succeed, and we'll help bring the resources together to, if it's at all possible, to make that happen for you. So hopefully you're getting that message. The other thing, following up, your segue was great, because I was going to mention that I put on all of your chairs this capital continuum. This is a great piece of information. Janice Senon from the Flexible Capital Fund put this together. I get the updates when she does it. This is the most recent one I have from late last year, but it's a great way to see, from the starting with when you need financing, friends, fools, and family are way at the right end, higher risk, higher reward, down to traditional banks at the other end, and lots of things in between. So we didn't cover equity today, but there are equity pieces, but we've covered a lot of this capital continuum. So you'll get a chance to see lots of different organizations that you can think about. So I'm going to talk about two things that we do at ACEDC with regards to funding. Our more conservative funding, I guess, or on the debt side is our revolving loan funds. And as with other people, we get our funding from the USDA Rural Development. And we are intentionally, it's designed to be this gap financing when you can't get all the funding you need to buy a piece of equipment or to start your business or expand it or do fit up in a building. We are often the ones at the end of the line. I do a lot of work with the National Bank and VITA. The three of us are often working together, and we're in third place if there's three of us, second if there's two. So we rarely, I think once I've shared first place with a VITA loan. It was a $25,000 loan. So it wasn't our money, so we, like others, we will do up to 40% of a project. So we don't go more than 40% of a project. And our maximum is $100,000. Our minimum is generally $5,000. We operate several different revolving loan funds, but that's the range that we can do. And like I said, it's for business establishment of new businesses or expanding. Sometimes we do it to save existing jobs. So we will take on more risk. So we take a hit sometimes. Sometimes the business doesn't succeed. Our rate is fixed at 7%, regardless of the loan. Because we're at the end of the line in terms of collateral, we have a higher risk position. So 7% is what we do for lending. Our fund is all term funding, so you get the full amount of the loan that you borrow at the time that we close the loan, and then you pay it back. And our terms are based on whatever it is that you need it for. So it could be 3 years or 5 years. If it's some real estate, it might be a 15-year amortization with a payout at 10 years. So we work with you and we kind of match whatever's happening with the other lenders, so that our terms are kind of all the same. There are times when businesses need to go, we're pretty flexible. If a business needs to go on interest only for a period of time, there was a glitch or something, we often do that. We have the ability to just, put you on interest only for a few months and then get you back on principal and interest, and our software system can figure that out. So we do try to be flexible to support the businesses the way they need it. What else did I want to say by that? We do ask for, we usually take a position on all business assets of the company, whatever we are, 4th, 5th, 6th, and we get personal guarantees. I think almost everybody here, we haven't really talked much about that, but I think pretty much everybody takes personal guarantees of anybody who's, for us, a 20% owner or more. So sometimes we work with businesses that have a lot of investors who own 1 or 2 or 3% or 10%, and we don't ask for their guarantees. It's really the principal owners of the businesses that we get their personal guarantees. We have done a lot of value-added agriculture. I have joked to anybody who will listen to me that Addison County is the adult beverage capital of Vermont. And just go down Exchange Street if you don't believe me, but we worked with Vita years ago and gave a Whistle Pig their first loan. They're doing quite well now. Shaxberry. I'm telling you this because I have their permission, because I asked them to sign a permission form, and that's why I can tell you these things. Shaxberry Cider, Stonecutter Spirits, Appalachian Gap Distillery. It's quite a list. We've done other manufacturing. We worked with VCLF, with Danforth, Nathaniel Group, which is a medical, how would you describe it? Medical equipment.
They make
yeah.
medical equipment, yeah.
They actually just got bought by a Japanese company. So that was kind of an interesting success story. And they're staying here in Vermont, which is what we want to see. And they're growing, and they have even more resources behind them now. It was one of their vendors. Vendors. No, who they sold to, right? Vendor. Anyway, one of their customers bought them. That's what I want to say. So we've done all kinds of loans. We really have helped a lot of small businesses in Addison County get their start and get going. And as others have said, we have no prepayment penalty. We're there because a bank can't do all the funding, and we consider it a success. I mean, you pay off our loan, and then the bank says, "Well, we can just do it all. We don't need you to do that, anymore." So that's pretty exciting. So there's a couple things we can't do. We can't do agricultural production. We have FAC for that, right? You guys can do agricultural production. We aren't allowed to. We rarely can refinance existing debt. That's a limitation that a number of us have. The USDA also says that we can't do golf courses or racetracks or gambling or anything illegal. So, so that's what we do there. And because we have the infrastructure set up, we're not a licensed lender the way most of the rest of you are. We're a nonprofit lender, so we don't have the same kinds of regulations that are required. But we have an infrastructure set up. So when the Champlain Bridge went down in 2009, the federal and state government gave us money to make loans to businesses who were affected by that. And so we have the ability, because of our infrastructure, to take on projects that required some really quick turnaround. I mean, when the bridge went down, it went down. So we were able to get money from the state and make some loans to businesses who were dramatically impacted. So we have that ability to do that, and we're actually now starting to talk with other communities who have revolving loan funds but don't have an infrastructure in place to manage their revolving loan funds. So we're doing some work with some communities around administering them for them, and so that's exciting. The other loan program I want to mention is more of a crowdfunding program called Kiva. I don't know if any of you have heard of Kiva. We are now, I just went online yesterday, Jennifer, we're one of 3 trustees now in the state of Vermont, from what I could see. We were the first that we did this a couple of years ago, and it's an international organization that does small loans. You can be you can be the jam and jelly person who does it, but on a much smaller scale, who needs $500 to buy jars. You could be somebody who's just been released from prison and you want to start your own business. I mean, they really want to do, help people start businesses, no matter how small. And it's global, but there's a whole U.S. Portion for that. And what they ask is to have a trustee, and we got approved by them as a trustee a couple of years ago, so that somebody with some financial experience can actually look at it, so that we sort of vouch for the fact that they're legitimate. So when you're investing online, you know that somebody's actually looked at this loan, and it's not just some fly-by-night organization that's made up a business that they want to do. So you apply for a loan, and and I have some information also on the table over here about this, as well as an article about crowdfunding in general and some tips that may surprise you, because it's not, you don't just put something up online and then the money flocks to you. You actually have to do some work. But with Kiva, your first loan can be up to $10,000, and it's usually for 36 months. It's a 0% interest loan, so you're just paying back the principal to the people who invest in your project. And it's crowdfunded in increments of $25 or more. So it's pretty nice. We've only done one loan so far, and it really is for businesses who don't need very much money. The one we did was for just under $5,000. Most organizations, we have microloan programs, but sometimes it's even too much work. If they just need $1,000, or they might need $500 or whatever, they can do it online. The thing about crowdfunding that you need to know is that you do have to work it. You have to market it. And so if your customers or potential customers never get online, this would not be the kind of loan project, the way to get funding for you. But if you have lots of your folks and you do a lot of business online anyway, you have a way to reach all these people, and you say, I'm doing this $4,000 loan to buy more equipment or inventory, and the people who love you will invest and tell their friends and that sort of thing. So if you're interested in doing that kind of a crowdfunding, you can talk to us. Jennifer really oversees the program. We work together, but she's sort of in charge of being our trustee piece of it. We fully funded our first one, and they were very supportive, and it was kind of a fun way to do it. It can be a fun way to get local people invested and involved and excited about what it is you're doing. But it's a unique program, and it's not right for everybody, but it can be exciting. So those are the two that I want to talk about. And then Don.
Thanks, Robin.
Last but absolutely not least.
So I'm Don Paul. I'm with the Vermont Manufacturing Extension Center. We go by VMEC for short because everybody has an acronym. So we're a little bit different than some of the other folks you've heard from today. We're on the operations side as opposed to the financial side. We team with a number of the folks in the room. In fact, John and Joanne and I were talking this morning about having been to a number of clients either together or separately at the same place. So it's nice to be part of this team. And as Robin said, our focus is how to make you grow. And so a little bit about VMEC. We're hosted by Vermont Tech College. We're part of a national network through the National Institute of Standard and Technologies in Washington, D.C. We're funded three ways. There's some federal funding through NIST. There's some state funding through economic development. And we do some fee-for-service. As the major areas that we focus on, there's a handful of things that we do. Operations excellence and continuous improvement is where we got started. We've been around about 22 years. And then business growth through innovation. How do you decide what's meaningfully unique and leverage that for business growth? And then we also try to be a resource for manufacturers. Like a number of the folks here said, if we don't have what you need, we'll try and hook you up with the right person, either on this panel or otherwise, so that you get the information that you need. There's 10 of us scattered around the state. We're focused a little bit by discipline. Most of us are engineers. Don't hold that against us. So we also have a half a dozen or so service providers that if we don't have the expertise on staff, we can tap into another network of folks in New England that can come and give you some support. Like John said, we might be a little bit down the road for you. Once you get established, you need some of the services that other folks have talked about here. Taking a look at your processes, how do you become more efficient, cost competitive, things like that. We talk about the triangle that all companies have to deal with: cost, quality, and delivery, right? Or service to the customer. How do you leverage that? We have some assessment tools that actually the first level is free. There's like 18 questions. It's online through a local Vermont company who's recently moved across the border into New Hampshire, and now they're moving back. Core Value Software. So we can come and sit with you and spend an hour or so going through these 18 questions. You get a report on where your strengths and weaknesses are as a company. So that's sometimes a really good roadmap into where you want to spend your time and what you need to work on next. So let's see. Our main focus is on creating good jobs. We do that through process improvement and then business growth. And so I brought some information. Here's our impact report. We're measured on impact that we bring to the companies. Our 2016 report is out. It says that over $150 return on investment for every dollar you invest in working with VMEC. If you're a small company, you're just getting started, and it's interesting, I think I've been to every one, but maybe one or two of the companies that were mentioned here this morning in one place or another. Olivia's Croutons started out when they were really small, and so we spent some time with them. They went through our Innovation Engineering Business Growth Program, and I'm sure that Francie would be interested in telling anybody about that, what that did for them. We worked with Nathaniel Group. We worked with a number of different manufacturers in the county and around the state. Maple Landmark, Mike Granville's on our board. So we take manufacturing very seriously. We've also worked with healthcare, financial, food and beverage, some ag businesses, because we find a process is a process. And so wherever folks are having trouble meeting customer demand, delivering their services in a timely fashion, need to improve the customer experience, we can usually give you a hand or direct you to somebody that can do that for you. We'll come out and see you as part of our federal funding when you're really tiny, because we can give you some good guidance on how to think about things. We've run a couple of free workshops for companies less than 20 people. NIST has recently encouraged us to work with more small companies. Our main charter is small and medium enterprise manufacturers, but they want us to spend more time with folks like you. And so if you've got questions, you want us to stop out, we can certainly do that. That's free of charge, and then figure out what and when you need from us and go down the road. So then we do public workshops. We also work on site with companies, and as you grow, then we would talk about leveraging some of the resources in the room to help you pay for the services that we provide. So I think.
Yeah, so some examples. If a company is moving to some new space or designing a space or thinking about that, before you start.
Thank you.
You contact me or you contact Don, right, and Don can come out and say, well, what is it you're trying to do? What's your manufacturing process? And you don't want to have the beginning of the process and the end of the process in the same place, and you're doing all these trips. It's sort of like, even I think about in my house, right? You pile things up on the stairs before you go up and you take a bunch at the same time. But but it's figuring out the layout that's going to be the most efficient, because you can lose money if your layout is all kooky and inefficient. So that's one example of things that you do. And I know in hospitals you've helped them with billing.
Yes.
And it's crazy. and trying to straighten that out and things
Right.
like that.
Shorten your cash cycle.
Mhm.
Yeah. So if you think about the process and the layout, we talk about fix your process before you buy software or before you build a new building and things like that. So that's where some of the impact comes from, is that we've helped companies avoid building a new building. We were working with a chocolate company up in Chittenden County that was planning on building a new building, and now they realize they don't need to. So there's some major cost avoidance there. We worked with Country Owned Products. When their manufacturing's in Shelburne, they moved to Winooski. They moved to a smaller space because of working with us and showing them how they could do things differently. Maple Landmark, we were pretty involved in helping Mike figure out how much space he needed and how he wanted to lay it out. And so those are the kind of things that we do. Streamline your process, whether it's financial or materials. We work in some construction companies where we're working with one major construction company where they were looking at how do we make projects come in on time. And so we just started showing them how to think about things. And so our real goal is to train you in what we know, share our knowledge, and help you grow, and we invest in the right places.
And you can reduce the number of steps it takes to do things.
Almost always.
Yes.
Yeah.
If I could just mention as well, we're involved, 2 Vermont Training Program grants. VMAC is involved, maybe even PTAC at one of them anyways. They were manufacturing, or still are manufacturing lines that all of a sudden weren't where they needed to be, whether it be a federal contract perhaps or just in manufacturing. And so they're trying to change the rails as the train keeps moving, if you will, and it's a very difficult process, and it ends up costing a lot more money. So I think all of us here, very rarely are we going to say it's too early, which we'd rather meet with folks on the too early than the too late, because it's going to cost a business or cost money. So certainly feel free to reach out to us.
Absolutely. We talk about it's like trying to change the wheels on the bus while it's going down the road. So the earlier we get to talk to you, the better off we are, because you don't have to try and do that. You can come in with the thinking on the front end. Like Robin said, if you're thinking about a new space, or John said, if you're thinking about setting something up, let us know. We'll come and talk to you. There's a small company in Bristol. We did some tech support. He's cutting logs with a 20-foot chainsaw. And so just getting to talk to us a little bit about how do we design that, how do we lay out the facility, what do we do, how much space do we need, those kind of conversations happened up front. And same thing with Olivia, how much space do we need. So Bees Wraps was another company we talked to about while they were still in the basement, how much space do we need, what should we look for, how would you make the process flow, what things should we do better, those kind of things. So the earlier the better, and then we like to see companies grow and say, yeah, we worked with them when they were only 1 or 2 people, and now look, there's good jobs as a result of it.
And the public workshops, I've been to a number of them, and they're really fun. They're long days, but they're all these simulations, so you're actually doing stuff, and then you see for yourself why it's so important and how much you can mess up if you don't do it right. So, and they have processes for office as well as for manufacturing, so you get your whole life organized.
We believe a lot in adults learn by doing, and so our workshops are typically one day that you spend some time hearing about the concepts, but you spend some time applying them in a simulated environment. The 2 major workshops that we suggest that people get involved in are one is called Lean 101, and the other one's Lean Office 101, and that's the ones Robin are talking about. Lean 101 is about moving material through a manufacturing process and the ins and outs and the do's and don'ts of how you apply that. And Lean Office is about moving information through a process. So in the first one, we set up a simulation that has materials. We're building small circuit boards, and we build them 4 different ways throughout the day and measure the differences about what was the cycle time, what was the delivery time, how many did we ship, what it cost us to make them, those kind of things, the important things that companies need to focus on. We found that you can apply this thinking to any process, and so the difference between manufacturing and the office is in the office you're moving information. And so we have a workshop now that we've been running for about 9 years that we use laptops and move information through a series of laptops. And so same idea, we start out in the morning, we run it the way we've always done it, and take the same kind of measurements, and then we apply some of the thinking and go through the tools with some other small learning exercises and run it again in the afternoon and look at the difference and let the participants take what we've talked about and apply it to that small simulation area and rearrange the workspace, change the process, do what they think needs to get done based on the training that we've just gone through. Everybody has a good time. It's very, very busy. It's very experiential. And it really, at the end of the day, we talk about how can you apply this, and invariably we get, wow, I could use this piece, or this piece was really interesting, or I see how this applies to me. And so the really cool thing about being a national network is every state has a center like ours through National Institute of Standard Technology. We got that workshop from the state of Washington, right? And so recently we went over to Maine to train them on how to do it because they were like, wow, this is pretty cool. It's a lot of fun. When you start talking with people and they start to really see how the concepts apply, it's very satisfying.
Great.
Thanks, Robin.
Sure. So I think everybody's spoken. I haven't left anybody out, and you've all been patient. And what I thought we could just do now is sort of end the formal part, and if you guys want to meet one-on-one with anybody here, have your calendars, and this is sort of the networking time. So I think we can probably, Jennifer, go off the air, and thank you all, and let you just talk. And thank you all for coming, everybody, panelists and participants. So,
Great,
Bill.
thanks. Bill. So we have some literature up here in the windowsill.